Don't touch that dial. You're tuned in to the Dread Podcast Network.
Welcome to Development Hell. For every horror movie that hits VOD, countless others end up DOA. Development Hell is the podcast dedicated to unearthing these cursed horror productions. We're going to find out what went wrong, and then decide if these titles still stand a shot at the green light. I am your host, Josh Korngut. I am the managing editor of Dread Central. I am also a filmmaker in Toronto, Canada. This podcast is a proud member of the Dread Podcast Network. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of Development Hell. We are now on week 3 of 4 of our limited audio series, Stephen King Unseen. So for this 4-part series, we are covering and unearthing canceled, lost, and troubled adaptations from everybody's favorite master of horror. Today, on our 3rd episode, we're marching forward and actually covering one of Stephen King's alter egos, Richard Bachman. He was a pseudonym, a pen name that King used for a while, and we're going to get more into the details of that soon. The book that we're covering today is The Long Walk. Joining us, as always, for Stephen King Unseen is podcaster and content reader Rachel Reeves, who you know from The Losers Club, Halloweenies, Pod in the Pendulum, Girls on the Boys, and of course, her writing here at Dread Central. Rachel, can you reintroduce yourself to the Development Hell audience?
Hi, hello. Yes, it is I, Rachel Reeves, back here to talk about Stephen King once more. Yes, I am a constant reader, constant podcaster, trying to be a constant writer, but that's more of a journey, as even our dear friend Stephen King would probably agree with. I've got my shoes on today. Got my comfy shoes, my comfy socks, got my canteen, and I cannot wait to hit the road with you and talk about this very special book.
Wow, sounds like something a fit person would say. Yeah. We are talking, as I said, about The Long Walk. It is a dystopian horror novel by Mr. King, or actually by Richard Bachman, that came out in 1979. Like last week when we covered The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, this is kind of a YA book. Would you agree with that?
It is. Yeah. It's interesting that we're doing 2
YA
books back to back. And I kind of forgot that about this until rereading it. And I was like, oh, this is totally YA appropriate. It's not as gruesome as I remember it being. I mean, it's still pretty dark, but
it's
not as
rough.
Yeah.
It's rough, but I do think it's like a good read for young people, especially like young men. It was originally published in 1979, but I think we got its sort of first omnibook when they collected the Bachman titles together in 1985. The book itself is a futuristic America where there's this new totalitarian regime, and every year there's this annual sort of showcase called The Walk, I believe, which just sees contestants walking a grueling contest until only one is left standing. Back in the year 2000, we had the American Library Association, and they awarded it as one of the best books sort of for teenage readers. Would you say that's true? Like, would you say this is like, if you were a teacher of teenagers, would you assign it?
I think this would be a really fascinating book to discuss with a classroom because it does talk about a lot of like pretty heavy topics and just kind of the interpersonal dynamics. However, one of the 100 best books ever. I don't know if that still would make my list. This looks like this came out in 2000, so I think we've had some decent books published since then as well.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, so Richard Bachman is sort of an interesting tentpole in King's career. So it was a pen name that he started using, but it also was a fictional character, and we'll talk about that in a second. And I think he started adapting or using this name in 1977 under the novel Rage. He hid this link between himself and this fictional sort of pen name for as long as he could until he was identified, I think, in 1985. And I think this happened when a store clerk noticed similarities between Bachman's writing and King's writing and did a little bit of like investigative work, connected with the publisher, and sort of King came clean and said that, he could do an interview with him, and it all kind of unraveled. The books themselves do kind of feel a little bit distinctive from the King books. There's something a little bit more gritty about them, a little bit more masculine, a little bit more. How would you like differentiate Bachman from King?
Bachman they always feel a little bit more raw. And I think maybe that's what you mean by like saying that a little bit, like they're
Yeah.
angrier.
Yeah. Very like
And
angry dad.
yeah, they're angrier. There's sort of this edge to them that I do really like because they're more unfiltered in a lot of ways. And it makes sense because some of them were written like this one that we're talking about. He was a teenager when
Oh
he
wow.
wrote this. I
Mhm.
think he was only 18. And so just kind of that youthful energy, that youthful unadulterated anger
Mhm.
and just kind of frustration, I think is something that you get in a lot of these books. And I think even Stephen King himself says basically like Bachman is not a nice dude. Like you don't want to necessarily hang out with Bachman, but Bachman as an alter ego allows him to kind of tap into that anger and not overanalyze it
Mhm.
and address some really interesting ideas. However, it still reads very much like King to me, especially, I mean, this is looking back with hindsight, obviously, and having read so many of his books. But it's funny that he thought that he could get away with it for that long because there's literally like words in like all of these very
Uh-huh.
distinctive phrases and like the blue chambray shirt and things like that that everybody knows King uses all the time. So it wasn't like if he thought he was going to keep that a secret forever, I don't know. He was delusional in
Yeah,
that
you didn't do a
regard.
very good job at that. Um, in terms of the Bachman books, there was Rage, which I think was the first one published, but not the first one written, which was really controversial, and I think was sort of taken out of print after the 1997 Heath High School shooting. What else do we got? There's The Running Man, I believe.
Yep.
There's Roadwork. There's Blaze. Do you think how many of them have you read?
I think I've read most of them. I actually, yeah, that's how I came across Long Walk in the first place. Is I had the Bachman book gathering which has Rage, Long Walk, Roadwork, and Running Man in it. So
Mm.
those were the first four that I read. Yeah, and then Blaze, and
Not
so
was it
some of them
not
are better than others
uh-huh.
for sure, but they're all pretty easy breezy. Like there's nothing's a huge investment.
No, it's definitely yeah, you're right. They're sort of usually a little breezier and a little shorter than some of the heavier King stuff. Some fun trivia is he appeared on an episode or maybe a couple episodes of Sons of Anarchy as a character named Bachman, which is I've never seen these episodes, but I see these feature images like every other day. They're so funny.
Oh, I love it. It's
Yeah.
like, and he's such a TV dork, and
Yes, he
so,
is.
he's such a fan of that show, so of course they're like, "Come on in, come on, be on here," and so
It's
it was
so cute.
perfect. Oh, we forgot Thinner
Oh,
too.
Thinner. Oh, that's
Yeah.
a strange one. And then of
Yes.
course, like later on, he did. I think he kind of used it in a more novelty way with when he did the Mirror books. I think it was the Regulators, and then Blaze, which I don't really know much about.
Yeah, and I think that it's funny because he's also done like hard case crime books in
Yeah.
recent years, and I feel like those might also, if Bachman was still a thing, if he was still doing that, I feel like those almost kind of have that sort of Bachman vibe in the
Yeah.
way that it's slightly apart from his normal, quote unquote, normal writing, if there even is such a thing, but it allows him to explore a different part of himself, something, different style a little bit that maybe he feels like Stephen King doesn't necessarily fit. But I think he's gotten a little just a bit more comfortable with the fact that, hey, I contain multitudes. And if I want to write something dark and mean and angry, I can do that. And if I want to write a mystery, I can do that. So I think he's gotten to be more comfortable with that over the years.
I love the comparison to the hard case crime or whatever they're called, because yeah, those feel pretty distinctive. And, you know, they're not as horror. And a lot of the Bachman books tend to not really be as horror either. Would you classify The Long Walk as a horror novel?
I don't, it's got horror elements, but I do think it's more like the dystopian kind of world. I don't know if I would classify it as full horror, but it's definitely got some horrific moments and dissects and, explores some pretty messed up ideas, that's for sure.
I don't know if it had a direct influence on the subgenre that came after it. It may have, and we'll talk about it a little later, but it's going to be interesting to compare it to other similar titles like Battle Royale and The Hunger Games, which will have a direct connection with this book later on. So I've done something very rude, and I have assigned Rachel to sort of give us a pretty in-depth summary of what this book was about. There will be spoilers ahead.
Sure, yeah. So the story of The Long Walk revolves around this competition where a bunch of boys just have to walk their asses off. So every year, these teenage boys are selected from around the United States, and they have to walk at about 4 miles an hour. If they drop below that, they get a warning. They're allowed 3 warnings, and then 30 seconds pass from that last warning, and they still fail to either get in line with what they're doing, get back in the rules, continue to walk, get up, whatever. If they don't get up in that amount of time, they get killed. They get shot. And so the thing is, the boys, I feel like when they sign up, these are all volunteers that sign up for this competition. They don't necessarily fully know what they're going to get into. They think that this is just like a chance for glory, a chance to participate in this highly publicized, highly popular event. However, they very soon learn that, walking 1,000,000 miles without sleep, without stopping to even go to the bathroom, not so easy, not super fun, and can be actually horrific. So this whole event is kind of overseen by this guy called the Major, who is a very respected public figure, but also a dictator of sorts, a murderer, a horrible human being, and knows what these boys are getting themselves into and still encourages them to do it anyways, which is just awful. And so as the boys are going along the walk, they sort of find themselves disillusioned with this whole thing, disillusioned with the Major, disillusioned with the system, with the public, all of that. And even the prize that they set out with such high hopes that they could actually win start to get kind of disillusioned with that too. So what is the prize? So the prize can only go to one person. So the very last boy living will get the prize. They get basically whatever their heart desires, I think is what they say in the book, which is very vague.
Yeah.
There's money, but also, if they want a car or a house or whatever, they can supposedly have all of that. However, it's also kind of vague as far as like what has happened to past boys. And there's even some question around that, like if this prize even exists, but that's kind of a mystery. It reminds me a lot of that movie that just kind of came out last year called Dark Harvest. The David Slade kind of like where these boys like they go off and everybody assumes they live happily
Very
ever after.
Yeah.
Yes. So very similar vibes to that. So if you've seen the Dark Harvest, it's kind of, similar
Also,
in that way.
Watch it, in my opinion.
Did you like it?
Oh, you hated it? I loved it.
No, I loved it.
Oh, okay, good. I fucking loved it. No one saw it, I feel like. It went really, like, under-discussed. It's Gorgina. It's so beautiful and spooky, ooky Halloween.
I'm glad you like it. Some people hated it, but I loved it.
Let them stop existing.
So yeah, it's two people here, strong advocates for that. And so definitely if you like The Long Walk, check out Dark Harvest.
Yeah.
And okay, so that was the prize. So the boys have to deal with that, and as they're walking, you kind of just they discover a lot about themselves. They're having these conversations. They're finding these relationships with the boys around them to continually deepen and evolve in really interesting ways. We see a lot of this book and a lot of these characters through our main protagonist named Ray Garrity. He's 16 and he goes through it, and at the end he is the winner, which is one of my beefs with this story, the fact that it's like, well, of course he's going to win, because we're seeing the whole book, we start out seeing everything through him, so I mean, it makes sense that he would win. However, he wins, and the ending is perhaps not quite what you would think.
Oof, it's rough.
Yeah, and I'm sure that we'll talk about that, but I also love the ending of this.
I love it too.
I find it very poignant and very effective, and like emotionally effective.
It is, but it also, like, in my dumb brain, it's just very scary. It kind of reminds me a little bit of The Jaunt on some level. It's just like losing it and being just gone forever. It's really not something.
It's very this book is very bleak.
Yeah.
It's dark. It's mean in a lot of ways. Not a very hopeful book, but that's what I kind of like about it. And you can feel that youthful anger that King has in this, but also, like, to think that he wrote this is before Carrie. And I don't know if he went back and edited this after he wrote it. I'm sure he did. I'm sure what exactly he wrote when he was 18 isn't exactly what got published in 1979, but pretty good. Like, I wish I could write something
so
like
fucking good. And he's like their age too. I forget, is this known to be like the first book he's ever written?
That's what he said. Yeah.
This
was completed before Carrie, stuck in a drawer forever. Carrie got published first, but this is actually, time-wise, something he wrote before that.
Oh my god. Meanwhile, I'm 35 and like struggle busting it out. So.
I know.
I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I do find sometimes when we're younger, while we might not be better creatively, we do kind of have this like unfiltered magic that we lose with age. Do you feel that?
I do. I think that this book got me thinking a lot about how I was kind of at this age, and how involved and active I was. Like, I've been a vegetarian for decades and decades and decades. And like, when I was a teenager, I got really into learning about like animal rights and all that process. And that was something that I really was passionate about on like an incredibly like deep level, like PETA, the whole thing. Like, sorry, don't at me. But at the time, like, that was so formative for me, and to find something that I cared about so deeply, and to feel like I can make a change. Like, I can, the world hadn't completely beat me down yet, and like, I think as you get older, you just get a little bit more jaded. You start to see things on a bigger scale and just kind of realize how overwhelming it can all be and how hard those things. But I think when you're younger, you just see the world differently in good and bad ways. And I think that there is magic in that, because you need that. I mean, even right now, like, with all the protests and things going on, like, that's so incredible, because
it's cool.
Like, that's how change does happen. And, like, I read a lot of Howard Zinn when I was younger, and, you can't stay neutral on a moving train. And I think that is something that The Long Walk, like, really explores, and you can feel that energy in this book, and I love that. And clearly King has continued to stay political. It's just now it's you see it in different ways, mostly on Twitter.
Okay, my next question for you, Rachel, what was your first encounter with the story? When do you remember first engaging with it in the zeitgeist, or even reading it?
I did read it when I was a bit younger, when I got this Haggard book that I have now that's got like marks from my dog chewing on it and stuff. It's all like worn out and torn apart.
It's saying, kill me.
Yeah. Kill me. Get out of my misery. But I haven't revisited it. And I'm so glad that I was able to revisit it for this exactly. And I listened to the audiobook this time, because this is something that I think would be great to revisit at different periods in your life, because you're going to take different things from it. Like, I definitely read it and received it a little bit differently than I did when I was younger, and I'm now seeing some things in it that I didn't quite pick up on, when I was 18, 19 years old, read it the first time around. So it's fascinating in that. But I'm also just so happy to say it still holds up like 100%, like holds up really well.
Holds up really well. It's so interesting that we accidentally did The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon followed by this, because they do sort of feel spiritually linked, especially our protagonists. Like, it's kind of boy-girl vibes. And I just really liked them both. And I really like getting to spend time with Garrity and see these other boys through his eyes and, like, how human they are. Where would it stand, do you think, in our overall, we don't have to have official rankings, but like our overall, King opinions? Where does this book land?
Oh man. I mean, I do like it. It's short enough and like slim enough as far as like what it's actually tackling that it would be hard to it's hard to compete, with like some of his heavier, more emotional works. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. I'd say it's on the lower end of my like top 50. Is that what I said? Top 50. Oh, I don't know.
There's like what, 60 total, but still,
yeah.
they're all stacked.
I and like that the thing is that it might be lower, but only because there's so many other incredible things above it. That's not saying it's bad in any ways. It's just a little bit, I don't know, more stripped down, I think. There's just literally less there. Yeah.
It's a little more basic. Even compared with The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, like that book is pretty esoteric and like very poetic and like takes you into different dimensions of emotion, and this one's pretty much what it is. It's saying what it's saying, and it's like not sort of going too far from that, but it's, I like that it's a little bit more upfront. It works with the tone of what it's saying.
Yes.
I wonder what characters stood out to you, aside from Garrity. Like, who did you like spending time with?
I mean, I did really like Garrity. However, I mean, there are, I think, but also he is kind of middle of the road because he kind of has to be, right? Because just who the character is. I do think that it's really interesting that we get a pretty wide range of characters. Like Barkovich is really interesting in a lot of ways.
Yeah, will you tell us about him?
So Barkovich is a kid who is like thriving on watching the other boys around him die. Like he's there, he constantly talks about like dancing on their graves, and like that's what's motivating him is seeing everybody else suffer, and he wants to get people killed. He's actively engaging and working against them a lot of ways. He does have a little bit of growth in moments, I think. But just an interesting character that would probably likely be there and would probably likely volunteer and sign up. And I mean, I think it's very obvious. I think a lot of people who've read this or are familiar with this know that this is a parallel or exploring kind of the Vietnam War and having boys sent off to war. So that's very...
about that. Honestly, I didn't even put that together, but that makes so much sense. Fuck.
Especially when he's writing this. So I think that there's a lot of comparisons to be made. And I think that Barkovich is a kind of person who would want to enlist and go fight, and not necessarily for, reasons that are altruistic and more like darker motivations for why they would want to get involved in the military and go out there with a gun. And, so that's, I think, what Barkovich is kind of embodying. I think that there's, what's his name? There's a character. Is it Scram, who he's young, but he's married. His wife is pregnant, and he's just an interesting character.
Yeah. He's the one where they're like, he's going to win.
Yeah, like he was going to win. Like he'd been training. He had all the right motivations for doing this. He knows, like, I'm not the smartest kid, but like, I know I can do this, taking it seriously, but then ultimately gets pneumonia and gets knocked out, like something you can't expect. He was the odds, to win. But you know what? Sometimes you just doesn't always work out that way.
Against you. Yeah, that was a tough one. Who did I find interesting? The character that was all like there's a very morbid character, although he was a sweetie pie. He was like kind of obsessed with dying. Art, I think it's saying here. Do you remember? You know what I'm talking about?
Well, there was Olson. Was he?
It was Arthur.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's sort of, they describe him as a sweet and sincere character, but he has a fascination with his own death, and I do think that sort of leads him to his own demise eventually. You don't have to have an answer for this, but did you identify with any of the characters more than others?
I don't know if I identified with like one in particular. I do think it was really interesting just as these boys are continuing on this journey, just to kind of see them grapple with like the idea of dying, and just how so many of them went into this situation not really I don't know, thinking that that was actually going to happen, and how quickly sort of the veneer falls on this competition, and just kind of the expectations versus the reality, and how that sets in, and how some of them handle it. I think even if it's not like the same character, just seeing how differently a lot of these characters kind of process this and handle it in different ways, I found that very interesting. And there is the guy that makes it all the way to the end with our lead character. I love that he's motivated by spite.
Hey, relatable. Come on.
I know. I was gonna say, so
it's all
honestly,
that we get me through.
I kind of like found that very relatable, and like I think I'm telling on myself here, but he gets like all the way to the end, and it's mainly just because the major, he finds out, is his dad, and that he's basically the kind of the illegitimate son, and wants to give a big fuck you to his dad who's abandoned him, and that's what's motivating him to just keep going step after step. And sometimes, you know what, whatever it takes for you to put one foot in front of the other, like
My God, I would be dead so fast. Jesus, I would not do well in this competition. How do you think you would do?
Oh, I do.
You do
well,
good.
I don't know.
You do good. You do better than most of us.
You know, it's like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of, especially towards the end, there's a lot of the characters who basically are just like, fuck this, and kind of the reality of like only one can win. Like, what's the point in us all helping each other if only one of us is gonna like walk out the door? Like, and we literally all can't win.
I found that very interesting. This, like, they have this impulse to help each other, and they do for a while, and then I guess logically it doesn't make sense, and one of them makes them sort of promise at one point that they're not going to help each other anymore because it complicates things too much. And when that happens, that's kind of when everything starts to fall to shit. Like, like that's when things get really tragic. And I think that's when the pneumonia happens because his shirt's lost her. It's when they uncouple. It's when they stop working as a community that it like becomes hell.
Yeah, and start, thinking more selfishly, which is what this competition wants them to do. Because honestly, they even pops it for a second. They're like, if there's 100 of us, we could potentially overpower this whole system, right? But they don't.
My God.
Because, they're set up to think like, oh no, only one can win. And it's like, wait, who wrote that rule? Why is that the case? And it takes them until it's too late to realize that.
On this reread for some reason. Not for some reason, but
yeah, very understandably why it is. And I think that that idea, different time, different situation, obviously, but I think that was very much on King's mind and kind of why he's exploring some of these ideas, especially, I mean, the Vietnam War obviously had a lot of issues around it, and a lot of people being like, wait, why are we doing this?
No reason.
Why are we involved? Very similar in that regard. And I think that he was definitely exploring a lot of those feelings here in this situation. And like, it also reminded me a lot, there's I love the Clash, and there's a Clash song called Inoculated City, and it's that kind of exploring that, like, why are we following these rules? Like, why are we, because this person said that and this person said that, but who told that person? And we're following all these orders, but who's giving those orders, and why is this system set up the way it is? And I think that that's sort of this whole walk is just, it's very interesting, and a very it's on the nose and it's right there in front of us, but a very interesting way to explore this bigger idea that seems overwhelming and is so ingrained, not just in our society, not just in our, the United States or whatever. Every single country on the planet has these sort of organizations. So it's something that's very relatable, I think. And there's not an answer, but it's still worth evaluating, I think.
Switching gears kind of intensely, but I want to talk about the queerness that was on display here, because it's so interesting to me the way that King handles queerness here, because if you're gonna do it, when you're doing, within a story about 100 teenage boys marching together, it really makes sense. It really feels like an organic place to investigate this kind of a thing. And he doesn't do it that often, King. We don't really get that much queer stuff in his writing, and when it does happen, it's usually not that problematic, but it's also not pushing the needle, let's just say. So this was a unique turn on it. So there's a moment in this novel where Peter, it's McRise, tells Garrity that he kind of feels for him or has a crush on him. And from this, we sort of get insight into Garrity's sexuality and harmless experiences that he had as a kid, and then the way that his mom or society was so quick to demonize it and shame it right out of him potentially. And then it does kind of get freakier from there. What am I missing here? Can you help me fill in the holes of the queerness within this book?
No, I think that you're right. This is a perfect story to investigate this, because it would make sense if there's 100 boys here. Of course, there's going to be a handful of them that are going to be queer, a large handful of them who are probably going to be queer. And I think that this sort of situation, being so confronted with death, being confronted this very likely could be the end. I think for anybody that would cause them to really reflect and realize and be whatever, that you boil down to in that moment. I think this is just some of those boys are realizing that, I might have feelings that extend past just girls. And at this point, what is it going to harm admitting that? What's the, why am I scared to admit this? What's the point? They're not going to fight it anymore. And I think it's actually a beautiful way to explore this. And sometimes, King explores ideas like this and maybe not so great ways, but this seems very subtle and organic.
Yeah,
it's
honest,
not
kind of.
It doesn't go super deep. It's just kind of there. It's not really ever used against these boys too much, outside of some little things here and there. But I appreciate having this in here, and I think it's just a good way to show that in the darkest moments, sometimes that's when you kind of are able to admit things to yourself that you'd be too scared to admit otherwise.
Yeah, it's civil stuff just falls away, and you're just left with what's there. I really liked it. Actually, I found it very, very sad how he approached it, which is better than usual. We were talking earlier about other times that King has attempted to deal with queer subject matter, and the one that really comes to my mind first is It, which I know is a very controversial one, and people aren't really they don't love it. For me, it doesn't really bother me that much, but I can understand that critique. Any other gay moments come to mind directly from King?
Well, even recently in Later, the character, one of the mom character, is a lesbian in that book, and so I feel like this is something he's still not wrestling with, but trying to explore and present it in a healthy way.
He's trying.
He's trying. He's trying to present it and be look, I can have these characters too, because it does seem like something that he's writing, and it makes sense. He's writing from something that he doesn't necessarily have a deep actual personal experience with, so it's going to come off inauthentic sometimes.
Yeah.
So
you know who felt gay as hell to me? The two antagonists from Salem's Lot. What were their fucking names?
Yes.
Yeah, they were gay as hell. But like, so is Dracula and Renfield. Like, that's a gay as hell archetype.
Exactly. Yes. But I
which
mean, they even had
hot.
like an antique furniture business, right? Like
Yeah,
Barlow.
hello. like, and there are times that like it's kind of like Fright Night too. It's like very bottom top dichotomy. Yeah. What am I got here? Okay, I want to talk about the YA dystopia of this book, and you know how it's kind of suspiciously similar to some other classics that came after it. More specifically, we've got Battle Royale and The Hunger Games, both of which I believe come from sort of literary source materials. Battle Royale is pretty different. Like Battle Royale, for those who don't remember, you know, you've got a class of students, everyone gets a weapon and they're told to go at it till only one person lives, so it's a little different like that. And the Hunger Games is more in line with that, but they both kind of feel like they're falling from this tree. Would you agree?
Oh, totally. Yeah, very much so in a lot of ways, but there's a big difference because in those, like, the kids are literally set up to fight each other, and
So
here, like, they can't. Like,
No.
that's one of the rules to participate in this walk is like you can't interfere or harm another player.
Yeah.
And so that I think that's interesting, and also I think speaks to the, you know, the whole like soldier war metaphor. But it makes sense that that would be the next evolution of it. However, I think that this idea was explored before King, even in things, other science fiction books, and or like Logan's Run comes to mind, kind of.
I thought the universe started existing in like 1979. Like literally, have we had this conversation? I joke a lot that pop culture began in 1978 with Halloween, and there was nothing before
There's
that.
nothing, just a black hole.
It just black. So what you're saying is news
Michael
to me.
Myers.
Yeah. So what you're saying is blasphemous and wrong.
So it does feel like the next evolution, though. I will say that, like, you know, kids going at each other, and I'm sure there's a billion more examples. So I don't want to like necessarily give Stephen King full credit.
I tried.
But it is interesting to see how that continued and how that evolved, and how, especially when we get to Hunger Games and Battle Royale, just how all of a sudden these kids are just straight up pitted
murdering
against each other. Yeah.
Goddamn, Battle Royale is good. That's a good. I mean, I haven't read anything it's come from, but I think it comes from like a graphic novel, maybe. I don't recall.
That sounds right.
Yeah. The movie's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the second one. I'm very curious.
I haven't seen the second one either.
I've always wanted to do an episode on the remake too, so that could happen one day. And the Hunger Games, which is, like, say what you will about the Hunger Games, but it's just definitely younger than this. Like, it's definitely safer.
It is safer in a lot of ways. I think some of the ideas they're exploring like are equally dark. However, just the way it's handled and the way it's presented does seem like much more fantastical than it does, especially in the movies. Like, you know, it does feel like completely disassociated. Whereas like Long Walk, I will say, even though it is kind of operating in this alternate universe, it feels very believable. Like this could happen. And that's what I think is scary about it. Whereas the Hunger Games feels like, I mean, come on. Like,
it feels a little Claire's like in the mall, but
but I haven't read the books, so full disclosure.
Neither. And I think one of the movies I really enjoyed in theaters, it was one of the sequels. Whatever. Catch the second one, maybe? I don't know. I remember one of them was like, I feel this fantasy. Okay, have you seen the movies?
Yes, but I couldn't.
Can you picture the one where like they shoot the ceiling and like the fake sky falls down? Yes. That one I was like, wow, Jenna Maloney. But yeah, the rest of them I didn't feel the fantasy quite as much.
Yeah.
Is there anything like other comparisons that come to mind before we move on up?
No, I think those are like the most obvious for sure.
Okay, so the reason people are actually listening, I think, to this episode is to hear about the unmade adaptations. And this is a unique episode of this podcast. We don't do this a lot, but spoiler alert, this is something that may actually happen sometime soon. And so I'm excited to hear about that timeline.
Yeah.
I'm wondering where it all starts.
So it starts, and this is always so funny to me because I feel like so many of these things that we're talked about start with a familiar name. So, like so many other adaptations that we've talked about, guess who's attached to it first? Oh, that's right. That's right. It's George A. Romero.
Wait, did he also do Dark Tower? Is this 3 for 3?
Yes, this is 3 for 3.
That's fucking hilarious. Hey, poor Georgie.
So basically, George was just like, oh, all of King's stuff, I want to do it all. I want to do it all. And Long Walk was no different. However, obviously, that never happened. And so the next mile marker for this story is going to be 2007, where Long Walk was then picked up by another favorite of King's, Mr. Frank Darabont. So obviously Darabont, familiar name again in the King adaptation sphere. The Mist, Green Mile, Shawshank. Guy knows what he was doing.
I forgot Shawshank.
How dare you?
Oh my! Want to hear a terrible secret?
Wait, have you never seen Shawshank?
Never seen Shawshank.
Well, all right. That's your homework.
No. I always just thought it seemed very dad. You know, I was like, is the number one most popular movie on IMDb? Like, I don't know if I can do that. But I'm sure it's fucking incredible. And I'm going to take this out because people are going to leave a bad review because they're mad at me. So.
You're going to cry and you're going to love it.
Cry. But it's all about dudes. Why do you have to stories? I was just thinking how much better this would have been if it was all girlies. Like
that would have been
right. I want to see that. That would have been wild. Okay, so we've got Frank Darabont, who, like, say what you will about him, The Mist is so goddamn good.
Yes, and like he was very attracted to this story, and I think he would do great with it. So there was this interview with him in 2007, and here's what he said about this story and why he was attracted to it. So he said, "It is just a bunch of kids walking and talking and getting shot. That's why I love it. It's a very intense ensemble character piece. Another one of those people in a contained pressure cooker situation stories that Steve does so well and seems to specialize in. To me, it's an existential metaphor for our mindless obsession with war, kids being sent off to die for no reason other than just because. I don't think it's a coincidence that King wrote it in the shadow of Vietnam, even though we've never really discussed that part of it. That's just my interpretation. It's a remarkable and pointed piece of fiction, especially considering he was basically a kid when he wrote it. In fact, is it true he started writing it in high school? Yes, Frank. I suppose I'll ask him. You do that. Anyway, chances are The Long Walk is more of an art house film than what we'd consider a mainstream Hollywood movie. When I do make it, I'm sure the budget will be even lower than on The Mist. A lot lower. But guess what? Spoiler, he never made it.
Oh, shit. I wonder if it had to do with the fact that The Mist didn't do well financially.
I think it was that, and I think it was that he ended up getting involved with Walking Dead.
Sorry, what? I've never heard of it.
Yeah, which is also very funny, because he was like, The Long Walk, The Walking Dead.
Oh my god, he loves to walk.
He likes to walk. And so I think, obviously, he maybe had a little bit more, I don't know, money.
Yeah, he had a lot going on. He was busy yelling at people, and then 10 years went by, and nothing had happened with it. And in 2018, which was like a good time to be a Stephen King book, New Line Cinema had picked up the rights to do it. And this was just after the success of at least It Chapter 1. I don't remember Chapter 2 coming out quite yet, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, It Chapter 1, the most successful horror movie of all time. So of course New Line Cinema said, gimme, 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 and just ate up a bunch of King books, and we have yet to see any of them. So that's bad. Oh, actually, Pet Sematary happened. I don't know who did that. They had James Vanderbilt sign on this time around. I believe he'd written scripts for Zodiac and White House Down and some Cate Blanchett drama called Truth that I've never heard of. Have you heard of this?
No.
Doesn't sound real. So he was going to also produce with Bradley Fisher, with Bradley Fisher, via Mythology Entertainment Production Company. He apparently had been a huge fan. So we're talking about Vanderbilt, a huge fan of this book, and had been eyeing to do it for so long, and even had written a script like unasked. Like he didn't get paid. It was oh my god, what's the word I'm looking for? A spec, really. And once he realized that, you know, the rights were up for grabs, he jumped on it. And yeah, he actually got to write the script. I think it's like a year later, we heard from Deadline that Andre Orvidal was tapped to direct. Really interesting choice. This is the dude that did Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. He did The Autopsy of Jane Doe. He did Troll Hunter, and he just did The Lost Voyage of the Demeter. I forgot. That's a long title.
Yeah, Last Voyage.
So he done some really good work. And in 2019, he was sort of set to go. He then it kind of like switched gears. I don't know exactly why Orvidal and New Line didn't go ahead with it. I'm always suspicious when a filmmaker has a financial like failure at the box office, because I think it so unfairly gets them sort of blacklisted in a way. Like, and he's so good, and it's not his fault that movie didn't do well, but I don't know, that's kind of like my suspicions. But Lionsgate was announced recently that they were going to now take over with Francis Lawrence to direct it. We talked about him really recently. Francis Lawrence is like, you know, Hollywood royalty. He did Constantine and might be doing Constantine 2, and now he's up on this. What's interesting is that he had done a movie for Lionsgate not long ago. It was The Hunger Games, the recent one, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. And so, yeah, I mean, we were just talking about The Hunger Games. It makes sense that someone would associate this project and someone that successfully made a Hunger Games film. I don't know if it's necessarily the right move. We'll get to that. It is interesting that Roy Lee, also a producer on it, is going ahead to produce with Lawrence. So just one quick quote. When he was asked about sort of the shakeup, we got this quote from Joe Drake, who works for the Lionsgate Group. When you have enjoyed a strong creative collaboration and success that we've had working with Francis, you want to repeat that experience as much as possible. We couldn't be more excited about reuniting with him on The Long Walk. He's truly unparalleled talent. So yeah, they clearly just have a good relationship with this dude. This dude made the money. I actually was under the impression that that new Hunger Games movie didn't do that well, but I guess I was wrong because they seem to be excited about it.
But he's done way more than just that. Like he did, I think, he did some of the earlier ones too.
Oh, really?
He did.
Really?
Let's see, Mockingjay, Catching Fire. Yeah, both parts of
Oh, he did all the
Mockingjay.
sequels.
And then he also did I Am Legend.
Yeah.
In 2007. So he definitely has experience in this dystopian, youthful, like both sides of this kind of world that Long Walk presents. So it makes sense why they would be like, oh yeah, of course, Francis Lawrence, get him on the phone.
He is just like, we were talking last week about like the cleanness of like a Ron Howard type. And I kind of had that feeling about him too. Like he's just like, yeah, he's kind of like, I don't know, not quite that gritty, but we'll see what he does with this. Interestingly, like we had an update only 2 weeks ago. We learned from Deadline that star from Licorice Pizza, Cooper Hoffman, was in Eyes to Star alongside David Johnson, who I think is in an HBO show called Industry. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's official, but it really looks like we're getting close to camera on this. Woof.
It definitely looks like things are moving for sure. Like they're talking, but as we know, things can fall apart at any time. How many times have we seen these casting announcements and they go nowhere?
100%.
But
yeah,
you know,
we'll see. How do you feel about this lineup of creatives for this project?
I'm similarly a little concerned about Lawrence's, like you said, that polish, that Hollywood cinematic like world that he creates. Same thing like in I Am Legend, definitely works for those films. But what I love about The Long Walk, like I said, is like kind of how real and possible it feels. And this is a very character-driven story, versus something driven by action or kind of these external conflicts. Like, yes, there's this world that's really interesting, but that's not what makes the story super interesting. It's really the dynamics between these characters and the literal journey that they go through, as well as the emotional journey that they go through, and these interpersonal dynamics that we see them exploring, and just the kind of constant threat of death hanging over them.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I just worry that Lawrence is going to make that a little bit too pristine. Could be wrong. It's just something that I think like Overdahl would have done really beautifully. Because I feel like Autopsy of Jane Doe, like Jesus, like they feel cinematic, but there is a darkness and there is a real like bite to his films that I want this story to have. And I'm just a little like, oh, I don't know if we're going to get that. I don't want to turn this into, the next kind of YA sort of thing, like Twilight or the Hunger Games. Like, I'd like it to be, it can still be YA. But what I appreciate about this story is it's not talking down. It's a YA story similar to Tom Gordon. It's a story that's not talking down to its audience, and I don't want that to happen again.
Do we get that in movies? Like, do we ever get YA that doesn't do that? I mean, I love YA. That sounds really rude, but like, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Like what though? Like what's something
Euphoria.
That's not YA.
But that's what I'm like but I want something
yeah,
to
it's
have
like an adult movie about teenagers, and which I think is what this is.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, we'll see. Like, I'm interested. I'm intrigued for sure. And I definitely think that there should be YA material that discusses really adult things. Like, don't get me wrong. It can lean a little bit more YA. I just don't want it to go like full Twilight.
They're gonna do that though. I fully see it, especially Lionsgate, who's like, so don't trust those guys, man. Have you seen the last Strangers movie?
No, but I have heard.
Oh my lordy. So Lionsgate's got some trust to earn back, I think, at this point. So
yeah.
But you never know. You just never fucking know. I didn't think Annabelle Creation or Annabelle Comes Home was going to be incredible, and then they were. So literally, what the fuck do I know? Nothing. So I was thinking, like, who would I want to do this? And I didn't give you this question earlier, so I'm in such like a better position than you are right now. But I'm just gonna ramble for a bit so you can think of one. Sure. But I think someone that I would hire for this is his name Simon Baker, the one that did Tangerine and the Florida Project.
Okay.
Right? Like, I want Simon Baker like during sunset with an iPhone and just like going around and filming this. Like, I want it to look like that, and I want it to be like so real that it like makes it hard to breathe, kind of. I love him so much. He had this huge movie this year at Cannes called Honora, and it's like already getting like best of year like chit chat, and it stars the killer from Scream 5.
Oh,
can I say? Okay, spoiler alert: the girly killer from Scream 5.
I can't remember her name, but all right.
I know. So I'm very excited about that. Have you seen Tangerine or no. Florida Project?
Oh, I've seen Florida Project, but
so you get it then.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think he'd be wild. What about you? Does anyone come to your mind? Big producer.
This is not the right director, and he would never do this, I don't think. But I do think like somebody with like a Fincher kind of vibe. Like, I want somebody who just feels like bleak.
I love that, actually.
Like, I want somebody maybe like, with that nihilism like in there. I even like, or somebody that just has an interesting vision in it and take. Like, I know this is a very young man, young male story, but somebody like even like Arkasha Stevens, like, or that team, because I don't necessarily. I mean, there's the women in this story it's a little rough, I think, just because they're literally only there for one thing.
To hug them.
But that could be changed, and I think there's ways to like make that work, and I don't necessarily think it has to be a dude telling the story, but then again, the young male experience, I think it's nobody's ever had a movie about that.
Hire like a young person, like hire like a 23-year-old that's never done this before. That could be interesting. No, hire me, actually. I'll do it.
You want to do it?
I'll do it.
That would be great.
It's gonna just like turns into a pride march, but like, no, well, it's getting too dark. I like the idea of Fincher, and honestly, sometimes Fincher will announce something, and you're like, "What?" And it's like, "Gone Girl? Like, what are you talking about?" And then it's the best thing that ever happened. He did the girl with the dragon tattoo, didn't he?
Yes, and it's incredible.
I love. People don't like his version enough, and I wish that he had done another one. But like, that's kind of fast food literature stuff, you know? Like,
yeah. You know who else would be really interesting? I had to look. I forgot his name for a second. Carter Smith.
Whoa, Carter Smith. Yeah, Swallowed was so good, and The Ruins, which is like fucked.
Yeah, like that would be really interesting
at one point.
That would be like, I feel like you look at his past work, that's got that darkness there.
Oh my god, you know who could play the what's his name? Like the major? Fuck, the guy from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 who was in Swallow.
Mark Patton.
Yeah, Mark Patton.
He could play the major.
Yeah. He was scary in Swallowed.
Yeah.
He's scary on social media, but in a way that I really respect. Yeah, those are good. I like that. So, okay, are we looking forward to this? Do we have high hopes? I kind of asked that. Where do you summarize yourself over there?
I am looking forward to it. My hopes are mid.
Yeah.
Hopes are mid. I don't have a lot of hope for this studio, but you know what? I love to be proven wrong. So like, by all means, like, I will watch it. I will be there, but this isn't like a film that I'm going into like, oh my God, I can't wait. Like, oh, holy shit. Like, I can't wait. Like, I'm definitely going to go into it, be like, yeah, we'll see. Cause that's where it stands right now. I don't know, TBD, but it will be interesting to see it come to screen. And that's the thing. We haven't seen this on screen before. Thank God. Nobody wanted another Salem's Lot, and we still haven't gotten another Salem's Lot. So who knows if we ever will, but I know it exists. Like, we don't want it. We don't need it. Sorry, but we're going to get it. Maybe, I don't know, but we haven't seen this. And I think that's exciting. So much of King's stuff has been done, but there's still so much left to mine. And that's what I appreciate. Like, give us something new, and that's what this film's going to do.
Oh, it's something new. Fuck. That's so exciting. Yeah, so we're just going to have to see. Rachel, where can you be found on the internet if that's something that you permit?
I permit. I encourage. Sure. All of the above. Okay. You can find me. I'll share everything I'm involved with on there. You can find me on Instagram at The Vinyl Girl, GRRRL, or Twitter at Vinyl Girl.
Thank you so much for listening to Development Hell. If you enjoy this podcast, then please do us a major favor of leaving us 5 stars and writing a positive review. It really makes all the difference in the world. We'll see you next week with a brand new episode of Development Hell.
Thank you for listening to the Dread Podcast Network.